The golden chain. I am a link in the Buddha's golden chain of love that stretches around the world. I must keep my link bright and strong. I will try to be kind and gentle to every living thing and protect all who are weaker than myself. I will try to think pure and beautiful thoughts, to say pure and beautiful words, and do pure and beautiful deeds, knowing that on what I do now depends not only on my happiness or unhappiness, but also that of others. May every link in Buddha's golden chain of love become bright and strong, and may we all attain perfect peace. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Okay, well, good morning, everyone. Thank you again for tuning in to the YouTube live stream service for today's Sunday service. Especially to those of you out there who are football fans. I know you have 4 different games on, and if you're tuning in, I applaud and thank you for at least partial of your attention. For those who do not know me, my name is Nick San Juan, and I am one of the minister's assistants for Reverend J. Jose Shinseki. Before I begin, I wanted to give a personal shout out and a big thank you to today's production team, Tom and Mariko Yamashita. Without you, our regular and new attendees would not be able to get their dose of their weekly Shinshu. A lot of work goes on behind the scenes, and even before I get to temple. It is because of you two that this is all possible. So with that said, please join me in Gassho. Living the life of Nembutsu, I would fain become a soother of all sorrows, of all creatures. May he be a balm to the sick, a healer and servitor until the sickness never comes again. May he become an unfailing store for the poor and serve them manifold things for their need. I will be a protector for the unprotected, a guide for wayfarers, and a ship and bridge for those who seek the other shore. For we are living in an ever-changing, fast-paced world which our religious, ethical, social, and political goals are being put to the supreme test. In such a world of high ideals, of a bodhisattva, this dynamic spirit of compassion must be revitalized in our daily lives so we may be of service to all sentient beings. More than ever, understanding and enlightened persons are desperately needed in the world today. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. All right. Well, I don't know about any of you out there, but I've been using social media a whole lot more since shelter-in-place began in March. I was never a big fan of Facebook or Instagramming, but now it seems like the only thing I do to pass the time when my daughter's asleep or preoccupied, I'm consistently on it. I get notifications on Facebook where I was last year and other years before that. And I saw a picture where I was last year, and I could not believe that was the last place I had traveled to. Me and my wife, we had so many plans for 2020, but for obvious reasons, our plans changed. You know, every 2 years, me and my wife like to go back home to the Philippines to visit our own respective families and friends. Mind you that I'm not from there. I was born here in the United States, but you know, for us, returning to the Philippines has always felt like a second home to us. Seeing family and friends that my wife and I have not seen in many, seems like ages. And also, most importantly, during these trips, it's also most humbling experience every time I go. And I think about my first world suffering, for instance, and I always realize it's never as bad as I actually had it. Here, I live a life of luxury compared to those living in third world country. I have all these quote unquote first world comforts and you know everything that it has to offer, and yet more times than not I find myself complaining about the littlest of things. And especially now during the shelter in place, you know, I can't go out and do things with my friends and you know, just again, first world problems. You know, I don't have to worry about food. I don't have to worry about money in the sense of my survival or my family depends on it. And I don't have to worry about a roof over my head with all the comforts it offers. Yet I still find things to worry and complain about. But in stark contrast, there are those who have to worry about these things that I mentioned, and even more that I could not imagine. Yet they still find happiness in the smaller things that I take for granted all the time. It also makes me realize no matter what your standings are in this world, be it first or third world living, we all suffer from something. And we all are caught in this Buddhist term of samsara, the cycle of death and rebirth to which the material world is bound to. Samsaric life is a bittersweet one, to say the least. It's good, beautiful, there's truth, love, compassion, and we can find many good things in others and other things in the world around us. But there's much in samsara that is tragic and painful. Just like the Buddha had found out at the age of 26, when he found himself in the streets of current-day Nepal for the very first time, he's seen old age, sickness, death, suffering. Much like myself, living a life of luxury here in the United States, growing up in what seems to be a palace and being sheltered from the reality of how things are elsewhere in the world. Then going to the Philippines, for my very first time even, and seeing the suffering of all sorts. And like the Buddha, shocked that these are realities that in the lottery of life could have been me if my family had never left the Philippines. In this samsaric state, besides its seeable attributes that it's also what our mind harbors, blind passions, the poisons like anger, fear, and hatred, greed. There are delusions to which drive us to do things that we are ashamed of sometimes. And our ignorance causes us to live our lives driven by forces of our own unconsciousness, not even knowing why we think or act the way that we do sometimes. There's also the ego, the sort of consciousness that prizes myself above everybody. This sort of ego will stop at nothing to get what it wants. Though this is a difficult world we live in, both in the physical terms as well as the mind, we start to really acknowledge it. It can be really hard for us to process that. The truths, facts, reality is sometimes hard to process and accept. Unless you're a Buddha, but of course none of us are just quite there yet. And we're just regular folks, going about our days, sometimes overwhelmed and weighed down by our own personal set of problems. At one point or another, we ask ourselves, or others, for the solution to everything, to all of this. And it's most of us while we're even tuned in or present. It's got us listening to someone less experienced in life talking about life and Buddhism. I may not be as educated, or I may not know as much as many of the Sangha, but if we are here and present in this moment, then we are putting our belief that the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha is our solution. There is a saying from the Buddha in the Dhammapada, no one saves us but ourselves. No one can and no one may. We all must ourselves walk the path. Many schools of Buddhism place this emphasis on self-power to live the life the Buddha had lived, to attain enlightenment. This is what makes Shin Buddhism so special. It's unlike any other form or school in Buddhism today. There are other schools that believe that they can force themselves to not regress from a path of a Buddhist monk and attain enlightenment. But Shinran Shonin says the exact opposite. We just can't do that these days, because in the age that we live in, we simply cannot save ourselves. As many times as we climb this so-called mountain to enlightenment, we fall down again and again. Shinran himself spoke from experience, from someone like him who joined the monkhood at a very early age, since childhood. Imagine him feeling that kind of failure when he finally got to the top and realized he couldn't reach enlightenment. He was said to have mastered everything a monk could have possibly achieved and still could not attain it. So for us, that is not failure. It's just the very nature of the times that we live in. Shinran Shonin left Mount Hiei in search of the truth like the Buddha himself, found a truth of the sutras presented to him by Master Honin, the Sutra of the Buddha of Immeasurable Life. It was in this teaching expounded by Sakyamuni Buddha himself. He found the essence of this path, entrusting yourself and your karmic destiny entirely to Amida in its primal vow. What does this really mean to entrust myself to Amida Buddha? The hardest truth to accept is our own individual delusions. Our ignorance is beyond measure, and our ego sometimes passes from our subconscious mind to our conscious decisions. When we finally do accept the truth about our limitations of our own self-power, naturally we'll look outward, not inward, outward. Realizing sooner or later that we're going to attain Buddhahood, some other power greater than ourselves must be the enabling agent for this transformation. Shinran Shonen's message of depending on some other power rather than my own self-power is walking the path of Shinshu. This message is a promise, a vow, made by Amida Buddha that promised if anyone would entrust his or her karmic destiny, taking full refuge in him, he will see that at the end of life, the person will take birth in the Pure Land and immediately experience the transformation to Buddhahood. To have this unwavering faith is Shinjin. A person of Shinjin was told by Shinran Shonin is a person who knows that Amida Buddha would never abandon them. Amida Buddha would bestow his infinite karmic merit so that our problematic karmic merit, our debt, has been solved once and for all. A person of Shinjin knows that this is now the last time that they would live a samsaric existence. And at the end of your lifetime, when we close our eyes and take our last breath, we will be born in the Pure Land. I don't know about you, but Shinjin sounds very hard, and it is. And that's what makes Buddhism, even Jodo Shinchu, more complex and harder to understand. But if we are able to attain Shinjin, we realize that we become full of gratitude. You know, it's like I've been told by Shinseki Sensei, it's almost like when a kid gets lost in a grocery store. Always want to venture out without mom or dad. But then, sometimes you get lost. I know I did as a kid. And we can't find our parents, and suddenly, we hear the calling of our name. And we run towards that feeling of safety, comfort, compassion that our parents offer us. So, you know, what do we say to ourselves when our parents find us? Or they call to us and we move on to them? We think how lucky we are that we found our parents, and we embrace all the compassion and love that they did for us, and we accept it. This sounds very familiar, does it not? It's like Amida Buddha always calling to us, as Sensei always says. It's just us awakening to that and moving towards Amida Buddha and placing our, I won't say faith, but placing ourselves in Shinjin. You know, this is what we would say, you know, I believe, Namo Amida spontaneously and with immeasurable gratitude when we finally realize that Amida has saved us. Please join me in Gassho. Renyo Shonin said, having lived for more than 80 years, my insipid life still lingers on. Wind blowing through the pine trees carries the sound of impermanence. Since this world of impermanence, breathing may stop at any moment, let us quickly place our trust in Amida's vow. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu.